company, the equivalent of the world's population, rides on their products every 3 days. If you want to turn the world upside down, sometimes you've got to cut the rope. What is that dream that God has put in your heart that keeps bubbling up when you pray and won't go away? Is it fear that keeps you from cutting the rope?
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on the beautiful March the 18th, 2021. Guando Deportes. Bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're excited. It's been on a 2-year hiatus, but it's back. March Madness started tonight here in the United States. Nobody wanted to play last year in front of your friend Donald Trump because they didn't want to go to the White House. But they're back and playing basketball again. And once again, I want to say thank you to our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses and doctors and first responders. They never take time off from anybody.
They never take time off from anybody. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear, welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic. He'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I'm learning to pause more, Big C. They say pausing is good for golfers that can drive the ball down the fairway. Well, I've been pausing, Big C, but my game's not getting any better. But I will never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, the whole world paused last year from all events. But one thing didn't pause, Charlton, that was the epidemic that's going on with our veterans in this country called suicide. And we lose over 24 a day to that horrific disease, Charlton. As a country, we need to pay more attention to it. I know people are preoccupied with everything that's going on, COVID-19, getting their stimulus checks, going back to work, and March Madness starting today. But we have not stopped as a culture the suicide that has affected so many of our great veterans of this country. And that's something that Americans need to pay more attention to. As we sit down and rave about the universities that are on television, think about those veterans that gave those universities an opportunity and the freedom to play without worrying about what's going on around them. We need to worry about those veterans and get more attention paid to them. The national suicide number is something that we give out, Charlton, but all Americans need to be concerned about this issue.
Very well said. I love doing our part. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting people back to work just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, Watch TV, and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender on the wholesale side in the United States of America. Also, I want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports. to the universe, just like God said. Let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from anywhere in the world. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Big C, I know you're talking about March Madness. I know a lot of people are just chomping at the bits to see if their team is going to cut down the nets. Everybody has their whole, I guess their office pools are going around. I guess they have virtual office pools now because a lot of people are not reporting to the offices. And I love March Madness. But before I even get into March Madness, I know we do a show on sports and news. It's all fair in love and war. But I want to touch on what's going on. And President Joe Biden talked about it today. You know, equality and racism in the United States of America. We just came out of a former president that said America did not have a race issue, and so he had a lot of dog whistles calling the virus the China virus. And there's a lot of dumb people in this country that will believe anything an ignorant person says, Big C. Racism is just not about race. It's sad that we've got to continue to see hatred among us all, to rise up against the violence and the vitriol. I think we got to be a part of that, Big C. You think about Asian Americans. Here we are, 2 African Americans, Big C. But the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, I hope that the violence against them stops, Big C. There's no place for hate and xenophobia or racism, even though the prior administration praised it, Big C. Your thoughts?
The prior administration stoked it so badly, Charlton. I mean, it didn't start there, but they stoked it so badly. And they've caused a lot of attacks against the Asian community here in America. They are American citizens, just like black people are American citizens, Charlton. And when we have other cultures attacking cultural people in America, Charlton, you can never get a country that comes together.
No, you can't. And that's why I love standing up for everybody. One melting pot, Big C. It's hard to start the day reading out the news. Came out of Atlanta. People know about it this week. 8 people were murdered, many of them Asian women, in shootings at 3 Atlanta area massage parlors. And it's heartbreaking because we're all talking about how we can just get along and how we can all create liberty and justice for everybody. So from Big C Sports, our condolences goes out to the families of all the victims and the entire Asian community tonight and what transpired in Atlanta. You think about it. It was an aromatherapy spa, Big C. And people go to spas just to get some relaxation, just to get everything healed up again, try to get your body back in order. So at an aromatherapy spa, which is, you would think would be the last place that someone would come in and try to murder people, but some coward young senseless person that did that. And my heart bleeds for the family. We want to send a lot of love, support, and solidarity to the Asian community. We cannot accept hate in any form, and we must all do our part to make our country better, no matter what race or color or creed you belong to. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you know, for this senseless person to go in and assault and murder these women and people in these massage parlors, Charlton, people who were just working, people going in for relaxation, and to say that he had a problem with some type of addiction and that he didn't single out race when he went to these places, yet all 3 of them were Asian massage parlors, Charlton. And to use the terminology and to have law enforcement say, well, it wasn't a hate crime. You target out Asian women, Charlton, and you're a white male. That is a hate crime.
Yeah.
And you go to 3 different destinations, and you were on your way to a 4th, you told police officers when they stopped you. This is race in America. You know, and people who want to keep defining, saying we don't have a race problem because they're white. You only have white people make that statement, Charlton. You don't have anybody else make that statement.
Yeah, I just hate when it happens to anybody, but I do love the fact that we can come on and give our thoughts and prayers and just ask people to get along. We just got to find a way to get rid of wicked people. That's why they have jails. It's all fair in love and war. Again, our thoughts and prayers go out to the family members and those who lost loved ones and people who are also there. They have trauma from being around that environment, and I just hope it gets better sooner than later. It's all fair in love and war, Big C. I do want to jump into the world of African American sports history. We're always inspired by the endeavors of these less celebrated African American competitors. every pro team's Jackie Robinson, Big C. We all think about the great Jackie Robinson and how much he did to inspire people. But there's a person by the name of Mel Grooms and Bob Mann. September 22nd, 1948, Big C. Mel Grooms and Bob Mann. Think about this. They suited up for the Detroit Lions. Grooms played his debut game for the Lions. It was September 22nd, 1948, which was the first game that season against the Los Angeles Rams. Both Grooms and Bob Mann played in this game. They became the first two African Americans to play in a game for the Detroit Lions, though the NFL career was cut short due to injuries sustained on the field. After playing in the NFL for 2 years, Grooms decided, Big C, to join the United States Air Force. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, professional sports is not a lifelong career, and a lot of people understand that. And so Grooms that got his education and had the ability to join the Air Force after his NFL career did not pan out. And as we see with so many young players today, when that career doesn't pan out, they don't know what to do with their lives, Charlton.
Yeah, and I love the story about this gentleman. That my father was also in the Air Force, so it has a special place in my heart. That's why I love paying homage to our military veterans, with a father of the Air Force, a brother that served in the Army, and a nephew that served as a Marine, and many friends that served in the Navy. Mann played professional football, Big C, in the NFL for the Detroit Lions 1948 to 1949, and then the Green Bay Packers 1950 to 1954. He was the first African-American player for both teams. Mann led the NFL in receiving yards. Not anything spectacular compared to today, but people play more games today, Big C. He had 1,014 yards. When you think about per reception, he averaged 15.4 yards per reception in 1949. Mann was asked to take a pay cut after the 49 season and become a holdout when the Lions opened practice, and that was in July of 1950. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if you equate those numbers in the amount of games that they played in that era, Charlton, and his yards per catch, he would have been a perennial All-Pro even today. And that was just a running league back in the 50s when they played, Charlton. The passing game was not that well developed at that time. But to be the first African-American to play for the both teams in that same conference, Charlton, I think that was the Central Division of the NFL back in those days with the Green Bay Packers, Minnesota Vikings, Bears, and the Lions. And to be the first African-American playing across teams, that was a pretty good feat.
A pretty good feat, but also I love mentioning they did it in Jim Crow. It's not like guys that change teams now did it in Jim Crow. July 1950, Mann, who believed he was being blackballed, Big C, by the league, would bring a collusion suit against the NFL in 1950. He was traded to the New York Yankees. Think about this. In August of 1950, released 3 weeks later, Mann charged that he had been railroaded, Big C, out of professional football for refusing to take a pay cut. He signed with the Green Bay Packers near the end of the 1950 season, and he was the Packers' leading receiver in 1951. He remained with the Packers, Big C, through 1954, and he was inducted into the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame. In 1988, Mann later became a lawyer and practiced law in the great city of Detroit. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I'm impressed with the part that he filed a lawsuit against the league for collusion. You think about the USFL did that, I believe, back in 1985, somewhere around there. Well, they filed a lawsuit against the NFL for collusion. This was a black man who was the first to challenge the NFL about their antitrust policies. And we think about the players today and the actions that they go through. All of these things are forgotten in history, Charlton, about what black people have done to allow the current player today to make the money and have the freedom that they have.
Yeah, to make the money and have the freedom that they have, Big C. Again, I think so much is possible, especially in this country. And even the fact that we have a Big C sports show, we don't have to go to someone controlled by the Jesuit Society or whatever society these guys belong to. And we don't have to go and beg someone for what we're going to talk about on a program. And that's a lot of freedom that a lot of people take for granted. They choose to go back to a situation where they got to beg somebody to have freedom of speech, Big C. I want to jump to current NFL days. The Buffalo Bills. Think about the man that had to sue for an opportunity, okay? Today, Buffalo Bills quarterback Mitchell Trubisky gave an agreement on a terms with a one-year deal. Didn't have to sue anybody for it. 2018 Pro Bowler. He was drafted by the Bears in 2017, Big C, in the NFL draft. with the second overall pick out of North Carolina. Never really panned out the way they thought it would in Chicago, and now he gets to sit the bench behind Josh Allen in Buffalo. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you talk about a career taking a slide. I mean, everybody got on Jameis Winston about, going to New Orleans, sitting behind Drew Brees.
Yeah.
But Drew Brees was on the verge of retirement. Now you're going to Buffalo, where they have one of the rising stars of the NFL at quarterback, and you were drafted just a year before he was in the first quarterback taken in that draft.
Yeah, in that draft, and the great Josh Allen out of Fireball High School in Central California, and then I believe he went on to Reedley Junior College or Kings River Junior College in Reedley before he went to Wyoming, and now he's doing his thing with the Buffalo Bills. I want to keep it out to the West Coast, Big C, because a lot of things are good in California. It's the Golden State. The San Francisco 49ers. Would you believe they're inviting in the enemy? Would you ever invite the enemy in, Big C? The San Francisco 49ers, the hosting former Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl MVP, who happened to get the Super Bowl MVP when the Baltimore Ravens were slow dancing with the 49ers. They were holding the 49ers linemen so many times, the Niners thought they went to a slow dance. They even turned off the lights. They were slow dancing so much, Big C. But they're bringing out the great Joe Flacco, who will provide San Francisco with, I believe, a considerable experience as a backup quarterback, maybe a backup quarterback, but he could also challenge because he's had a Super Bowl ring on his finger, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, here's a guy who can understand the Kyle Shanahan system in San Francisco, Charlton.
Yeah.
He's worked with pure drop-back passes throughout his career. And bringing in Joe Flacco, I mean, he's become a journeyman as of late with the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets.
Yeah.
But to have a stabilized offense like you have in San Francisco and the talent around, I think they'll bring him in and keep him as a backup. And if Jimmy Garoppolo goes down or struggles at any point during the season, you have a proven veteran to bring in.
Yeah, I think Jimmy Garoppolo's only made it through one season start to finish. I know he had a knee injury against Kansas City a couple of years ago, and he was running out of the pocket when that happened. This last season, he had an ankle injury, so he hasn't been reliable. The year they went to the Super Bowl, I think he went start to finish that year. So when you bring on a quarterback, there's a good chance that you'll see some playing time. I think Joe Flacco brings a lot of experience that the 49ers can definitely use. And even if he's not going to be a starter, they're not going to start him because of the contract, Big C. But I do think that if they're going to stick with Jimmy G, that he can learn a lot by listening to Joe Flacco, kind of like in the role of what Alex Smith did for touchdown Patrick Mahomes. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think he had the greatest tutor when he started his NFL career in New England, Charlton. He backed up Tom Brady for 3 years.
Yeah.
You're not going to get any more tutelage than what you got from him.
That's very well said. Hey, you always want to count Super Bowls. What's 7 Super Bowls compared to 1 Super Bowl? It's all fair enough word, Big C. But I think it's a good deal for the San Francisco 49ers to bring out Flacco, and then Jim Harbaugh and his brother can always say, who's got it better than us? Nobody's got it better than the Harbaugh's, Big C. So hopefully that pans out in San Francisco. Speaking of San Francisco, and speaking of things panning out for the 49ers, they're still right there. I think if they get their healthy players back, their players coming back healthy, they'll be making a strong run to at least challenge in the NFC West Division. But I want to bring you up to this thought, because we all want to watch football. We want to watch it on television. Some people watch it on a cell phone. The NFL, they reach a new 11-year broadcast agreement with TV partners. Amazon Prime lands Thursday night games. I believe it's going to start in the 2023 season, and they didn't have to sue anybody to get it, Big C. So media is growing, Big C, your thoughts?
Media is growing, Charlton, but, the owners were very slick in how they did this, Charlton. They reached an agreement with Amazon Prime and a few other media outlets, Charlton, but what they had done was set the salary cap prior to reaching these agreements.
Yeah.
So it puts a lot more money in the owner's pocket. I think the deal with Amazon Prime is worth $10 billion a year. So when you think about the money that's going to be going into the owner's pocket, and the players were so quick to make a deal as far as getting in that collective bargain agreement this year, Charlton,
yeah,
they're going to lose out on a lot of millions of dollars.
Well, millions and millions. It's all the same after you get so much money, Big C. NFL did announce a new 11-year broadcast agreement. They did that today in an unprecedented partnership with its usual television partners, as well as the new emphasis on the digital platform. We know that streaming is really the new wave of the future. People may start cutting cables, as everyone has their own device now. They have their own apps. That's what we have. We're broadcasting on an app also, Big C, not having to rely on the old good old boy network that had cable television all wrapped up. So per the Sports Business Journal, the league will collect about $10 billion annually, and that figure in the league would neither confirm or deny. So if they're reporting $10 billion, is more like $15 billion. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you got to keep it out of the player's pocket, what you're making, so you can't do full disclosure unless the players sue you, and they're not going to do that.
Yeah, I remember when I was a young boy in college, I used to work as a sky cap, and sometimes as a sky cap, I would go out and make about $200 in 1 hour just by getting in the planes, especially the guys that flew in from Texas. They always had big belt buckles, Big C, and also big wallets, and I would sometimes collect $200 in about an hour's work. But I was young and I was wet behind the ears, so when it came for the toke, I would be proud and say, hey, I got $200. I was working hard. Some of the old timers, they said they made like $5, Big C. I think I was being hoodwinked, Big C. Your thoughts?
Called being fleeced, Charlton.
Yeah, I was fleeced, Big C. I think that $10 billion might be a low report for the NFL and that TV contract. So at the same time, and I love the fact that they're expanding more media. What does this mean for the fans? I mean, the fans, we don't have anyone outside of maybe 20% of fans going to games. But for the fans, what does this mean when you can see it on many more different outlets, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's always been accessible, Charlton, with these cellular devices and laptop computers that everybody has. You've always, for the past 5 years, been able to carry a game around in your hand, regardless of the sport.
Yeah.
It's just a bigger pocket and bigger payday for the owners.
Yeah, it's funny how TV, you go into a department store and they're pushing these 50, 60, 70, 80-inch TV screens, and then you got TV companies and media companies saying, hey, you can just watch it on your smartphone. There's a lot different from a 2-inch screen on your phone, Big C, to an 80-inch on your house, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I sit in front of an 85, Charlton, when I watch the game.
Yeah.
I know I can get it on my phone, but I never turn it on.
You never turn it on. Sometimes it's good to have it on your phone for when you got to go to the restroom. Can never miss a play, if that makes sense to you. So welcome to the 17-game regular season, and also welcome to the league that wants to practice more on health and safety. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the 17 game, when you look at it in reality, you're going to lose a preseason game. You're going to be down to 2 preseason games most likely. So you're not going to get the players beat up even any more than what they are. And we've seen in the past couple of years, they got load management, especially the last game. If you got a position wrapped up in the playoffs, you sit your starters.
Yeah, you sit your starters. It's all fair and love and war. I know it's going to be exciting just to have more football that people can talk about, whether you watch it on your cell phone or whether you watch it on your TV and sitting up on the wall. It's all fair and love and war. I really look forward to more opportunities for people to see more NFL football. Just to go over a couple of things that are happening also in the world of the NFL. People are swiping left and swiping right, Big C. It's not just for dating sites. It's also for deciding if you want to keep a player or trade him for greener pastures, if that makes sense. Bears released top cornerback Kyle Fuller, free up $14 million of cap space, Big C. He's only 29 years old, entering this final year of a $20 million contract. The Bears got an offensive and defensive challenges, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, every team, Charlton, is making moves right now. It's all about the salary cap and getting at it. These players are going to take less money, but they have to release them to get under salary cap, and that's universal across the league. I mean, this happens every year. But right now, I mean, these moves really don't mean anything until you get to training camp.
Until you get to training camp. The Tennessee Titans cornerback Kevin Johnson heading to Tennessee. Former Browns cornerback Kevin Johnson going to be playing with the Titans on a 1-year deal. So that'll make it good for Tennessee. Cornerback Desmond King joining Houston Texans on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal with Big C. And that's not bad for him. He'll get a chance to go down to a team where everybody wants to leave, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, going to Houston, no, it's not that he wants to leave. He wants to go there. He's got a job opportunity.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's all these players want is a job opportunity. They don't care where they play.
Yeah, that's very true. Wide receiver Bashard Perriman joins the Detroit Lions, a team that his father started for a Big C. Looks like a 1-year, $3 million deal. Not too shabby that he gets to use the same urinals that his father used back in the day, Big C. Your thoughts?
Probably making more money than his father.
Making more money than his daddy made also. And you look at the Colts, they host offensive tackle Julian Davenport on a free agent visit. I think Washington is doing a good deal. They signed center Tyler Larson, and they signed the former Panthers center Tyler Larson, another player for Carolina, to that Washington pipeline. There's something about, I know collusion doesn't exist, but you got the good old boy Rivera. A lot of people from Carolina tend to want to commute to Washington. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, what he's doing is he's getting players that he has familiarity with when he's signing them, Charlton. Just like Bill Belichick in New England, he signs players that he had problems playing against as a coach.
Yeah, as a coach. And then also the Jets, Big C, they agreed to sign center and guard Dan Feeney. The Jets agreed to contract with a former LA Chargers guard, and he has 57 career starts, mostly at left guard, started 16 at center in 2020, so they're going to add more dimensions to their offensive line. The Jets look like if they can, I don't know what they're going to do with Sam Darnold, but I would love to see him work it out with Sam Darnold. They have new leadership, new management, new head coach, and maybe, just maybe, that quarterback that led the USC Trojans to a Rose Bowl might lead the New York Jets to a 500 season. Big C, your thoughts?
They might need to lead him to a mental psychiatrist, Charlton, because he's shook.
Yeah. Hey, you can't go back to the days of mononucleosis. That can shake a lot of people. Watch out for those man-eaters in New York, Sam Darnold. Not everything is green. If that makes sense to you, it's all fair level war. I want to jump down before the Big C pause to college football. Just coming out of Black History Month. Every day is Black History Month. There's no certain 28 days for it. But I really appreciate, when I was in high school, I had a player that was able to go play college football at Grambling State University, Big C, and he talked about how it was such a history lesson for him when he left California for Grambling. College football, Black College Football Hall of Fame has established the HBCU Legacy Bowl, Big C. It's a postseason all-star game that will showcase NFL draft-eligible players from the historically black colleges and universities. Big C, I think that's a beautiful thing happening, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's a great thing happening, Charlton. So many historically black college players were snubbed from the other bowl games, the Senior Bowl games, the East-West Shrine game, Charlton. Now they have a game that's just placated for them to showcase black talent once again.
Yeah.
Just like all the HBCs used to do before college integration, Charlton. And this is a great move to get them that extra look in front of the scouts to potentially be drafted instead of a free agent in the NFL.
Yeah, the Legacy Bowl is going to be a nice showcase, Big C. The game will take place on Saturday after the Super Bowl next February at Yeoman Stadium at Tulane University, Big C. The NFL Network will broadcast the game, and I'm sure they'll have other cable networks that will cover the game from the South. Maybe Amazon Prime, as a lot of other networks are growing too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, just to have that extra exposure, it's not even about who's broadcasting on television, Charlton. It's about the scouts being there and the players having extra exposure.
Yeah, the players have an extra exposure, and maybe they'll get more African-American broadcasters that will get extra exposure also. Sometimes they're marginalized and cut out of the thicker pie, if that makes sense to you. So the league is a major partner in the game, as are Tulane and the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. I think that's beautiful. The game is also part of a week-long celebration of African-American culture and history. About 100 of the top HBCU players are going to be invited to and play the game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, like I said, that's great. You know, they're going to be out there that extra game. They're going to get the chance to run some 40s, do the bench press, Charlton. You know, most HBCUs don't have a pro day. This will be their pro week in front of pro scouts.
In front of pro scouts, they'll do their thing. You get that final chance to prove yourself, and oftentimes when you have people coming to a big event, you'll get more exposure. And speaking of more exposure, we're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk more about that one shining moment. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast TV, also Comcast Spotlight. I really appreciate them bringing Big C Sports to the universe. It's all fair and level war. Big C, tonight we got they say cut down the nets for March Madness. You don't have to always cut down the nets until the final game, but you don't get the chance to get to the final game unless you win. Tonight's basketball, West Coast style versus the East Coast, Michigan State versus UCLA. Fight, Big C. Is the first 4 game we've waited for years to watch. UCLA has won more national championships than any other program. And the last time Michigan State went for more than 4 years between the Final Four appearances was the mid-1990s. It's a game with the metrics, Big C. UCLA should probably win. They have a better record, depending on how the game is called. But they should win, is my opinion. It's enough also that Michigan State's bringing a lot of experience to the court as well, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the UCLA might have a better record, but Michigan has played against better competition. When you think about teams in their conference that are in the single-digit seeding, Charleston, Michigan, Ohio State, and Illinois, they beat all 3 of those teams during the regular season. Much competition, much more difficult competition than what they're going to face, I think, tonight against UCLA.
Well, we will see. They said the same thing when Lou Alcindor was doing his thing at UCLA, but it's all fair and level where I look forward to a good basketball game. That's one that actually set the DVR to record. Also, when you think about college basketball, in one shining moment, the great late Teddy Pendergrass, Big C, when you think about this, there's a bunch of weird things going on about the brackets for the 2021 NCAA men's basketball tournament. Big C, there's no Duke, there's no Kentucky, there's no Indiana, there's no Louisville. There is a report that all of those schools were short on paper bags, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, it seems weird when you have these benchmark programs that are always in the tournament,
yep.
And you turn around and they're not there this year, Charleston, and these teams have won national championships in the past.
Yeah, they learned their lesson. Next time you leave the store and they say paper or plastic, they started saying plastic. They got to go back to saying paper bags so they can try to get better recruits. At least 2 of those 4 teams they partook in to look at the previous 44 NCAA tournaments. Think about that. The previous 44 NCAA tournaments, Big C, the last time all 4 missed the cut, Big C, it was 1965. Even though Duke finished the season in the Associated Press top 10 poll, all 4 teams had winning percentages of 600 or better. The 20-team era in the NCAA tournament was different. No Kentucky, no Louisville. And Pitino's doing this thing as I own now, Big C. Even more bizarre, he went to a different school, and they're in the tournament, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about Louisville and Kentucky. Rick Pitino won national championships at those 2 universities, Charleston, and now he's at Iona coaching in the tournament once again, and those 2 teams are out.
Yeah, he has a lot of paper bags at that university because they found him in the storage room. It's all fair and level war. Baylor, them good old boys down in Waco, Texas, Big C, is the number 1 seed. Is the first. The Bears had not previously received their number 1 or number 2 seed and have been to think about this. They haven't been to the Final Four since the days of Jim Crow back in 1950, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, things have changed on the landscape of college basketball. You think about Waco, Texas, being the center of basketball in the state of Texas with all those other big universities.
Especially the Longhorns. They can't beat out Baylor's all fair level war. Gonzaga, the Zags. My championship thoughts is that they will sing one shining moment, Gonzaga, but it's all fair and level where they got to earn it as the favorite to win it all. And this fun reality is that some people simply cannot process because they refuse to believe that a mid-major could ever be the best team in the universe. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Mark Few has been down this road before with the number 1 ranked team going into the tournament and came home without cutting down a net.
Yep, he came home without cutting down the net, but he also came home with a lot more paper bags. The recruiting has been very strong. Also, when you think about 2021 March Madness, NCAA tournament Cinderella to consider, the last time we had an NCAA tournament back in 2019, Big C. It's amazing saying it was that long ago, but it was 2019. There was only, think about this, only 1 team seeded lower than 5 that advanced to the Sweet 16. That honor belonged to then number 12 seed Oregon, which bowed out of the big dance in the Sweet 16 after a close loss and a highly contested loss to eventual national champion Virginia. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, that lets you know that those boys out on the West Coast have a hard time playing East Coast basketball, Charleston.
Yeah.
But they did well to get to the Sweet 16.
They did well to get to the Sweet 16, and they realized some things is all fair in love and war. People like hating on Ducks sometimes. It's all fair in love and war. 2018 NCAA tournament. It featured 6 double-digit seeds advancing in the first round of the 2 of the number 11 seeds in the Sweet 16. One of those teams, Big C, that wonderful little lady from Loyola, Chicago. that's their biggest fan. She's from Loyola, Chicago squad that advanced all the way to the Final Four last year. Everybody's Cinderella. No matter who ends up winning all these games out of their bracket, Big C, the Cinderella stories are among the best parts from March Madness. Especially, she's such a sweet little lady, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you're always looking for the little schools to knock off the big boys, Charlton. You come in with not much fanfare, but athletes, once they get on the floor, it's about them competing. It's not about the name on the jersey.
Not about the name on the jersey, Big C. Unless you're some of those Southern conferences, it's always about don't call fouls on that color jersey, if that makes sense to you. In the South Regional, number 12 seed Winthrop, they're 23-1, Big C. First up is number 5 Villanova, with probably the best dressed college basketball coach in the universe, the great Jay Wright, Big C. And then the Trinity is number 12 versus number 5, upset pick for good reason. Big C, why does he have to wear the best dressed man in the world of college basketball? Big C, your thoughts?
That means that you don't sweat, Charlton, and you care about your appearance everywhere you go. He probably even have tailor-made sweatsuits.
He probably does have tailor-made sweatsuit. It's all fair level war. The Midwest Regional number 10, Rutgers University. They're only 15-11. First up, Clemson. Possibly number 2, Houston, considering a number 10 seed from the Big Ten to be a Cinderella. May seem like a stretch, Big C, but after a 30-year NCAA tournament drought, the Rutgers squad, man, these good old boys from New Jersey, they're looking to make some noise, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about a team that's battle-tested in their conference, Charlton, coming out of the Big Ten. And you know this is a conference with Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, Ohio State, Charlton, representing that conference. So they had a tough schedule just within the conference.
Yeah, they had a tough schedule just in that conference. In the Western region, the weather's best on the West Coast. The Western region, number 14 seed, Eastern Washington, they're 16-7. First up, number 3, Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz, Kansas. And then possibly the Trojans, number 6 of USC. Ohio is the trendy underdog pick in the Western region, but Eastern Washington may also be worth a look, as both are facing opponents who were forced to withdraw from their conference tournaments due to COVID-19. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, they got that nickname, the Eagles, Charlton, and who knows, they may fly high once they get into the tournament.
They may fly high once they get into the tournament. Who also may fly high in the East Regional, number 14 seed Abilene Christian. They are 23-4. First up, Texas, number 3 Texas, the Longhorns. Then possibly number 6 BYU. Abilene Christian, Big C, they were not even eligible for the tournament. Last time Texas won on a big dance, it was since completing their transition to Division I 2017-2018 season. But the Wildcats actually have more talent than they used to have. They got a lot better recruiting, NCAA tournament appearance than the Longhorns. They're probably more talented than the Longhorns from the same state, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about the teams that are coming out of that state, Charlton. You got Baylor, number 1 seed. You got Abilene Christian, who is going to be playing one of the big boys in the state, University of Texas. This could be a signature win in the history of that program.
Yeah, a signature win in the history of that program. Sometimes they're the little engine that could. Is all fair and love and war. I want to bounce the ball after we cut down the nets for one shining moment. Basically, I want to go to the world of the NBA down south. Again, thoughts and prayers with all the families who have had to deal with this foolishness. It's a crazy world that we live in when you can have an insurrection and the man that caused it is still saying there's not a race problem that he perpetuates. It's all fair and love and war. NBA basketball, the Atlanta Hawks, they're 6-0 under new head coach Nate McMillan. McMillan, Big C, in his 5th head coach. Think about this. The 5th head coach in NBA history to win his first 6 games after taking over at midseason, took over just right before the All-Star game, Big C, joining Lenny Wilkins from 77 and 78, the Seattle Sonics at the time. Richie Abato, Big C, 96-97 for the Orlando Magic. The great Kurt Rambis, 98-99 for the Lakers. And also the great Lawrence Frank, 2003-2004 with the Nets, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Lenny Wilkins went on to win an NBA title with the Seattle Supersonics. And I know Nate McMillan would love to do the same thing with the Atlanta Hawks. You know, they've never really gotten anywhere in the playoffs. Is this going to be their year? Can they stay on that hot streak?
I think this is the year that they will make the playoffs because they just have a great shooting team. And he's kind of stabilized the things down there with that dirty bird on the side of their jersey. It's all fair and love and war. And speaking of being fair and love and war, and speaking of stabilizing things, the great Luka Doncic, Big C, he gave the Dallas Mavericks another night of unstoppable offense. And sometimes it doesn't even matter who defends him. When you think about he's still a young man. I think he's only 22 years old. The great Luka Doncic, case in point, 42 points. Actually, Paul George, the LA Clippers superstar, whose name always comes up in conversations about the NBA premier defensive stopper. Dollar Dame sent the Clippers out of the playoffs. It was Paul George couldn't stop Dollar Dame. Last night, Paul George couldn't stop the great Luka Doncic, Big C. Doncic made 4-time all-defensive selection look foolish on numerous occasions during his masterful performance for the Dallas Mavericks in a 105-89 win on Wednesday. And the Clippers are leaking a little bit of oil, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, they're not leaking a little oil. They could have got a lot of oil down there in Texas, y'all.
Yeah.
They ran up on Luka Doncic like an iceberg, put that chill on them last night, y'all.
Yep.
But, you know, you always rave about those teams in L.A. They're going to need to go down to Texas and get some barbecue and get right.
There's nothing wrong with LA barbecue is pretty good, but Texas has a little bit more meat on the bone. That makes sense to you. The Mavs are now, believe it or not, maybe like the great TV show back in the day, Larry Hagman, the movie Dallas, that TV show. The Dallas Mavericks are 21-18, but they've won 11 of 14 games marching back into the Western Conference playoff picture after falling behind by a 500 earlier in the year. The Clippers are now 26-16, but it's amazing that Dallas is playing much better basketball than the Clippers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Luka was injured early in the year, and he wasn't healthy. Now
That's
that
right.
he's got his legs back under him, he's got that rest at the All-Star break, y'all. But Dallas is ready to and primed to make a run here in the second half.
Ready to make a run in the second half. Thinking of Los Angeles, Artesia High School's finest, the great James Harden. He dropped 40 points, 10 rebounds, and 15 assists on Wednesday. 3-point Harden has a triple-double. Short-handed Nets stop the Pacers. It's hard to say they're short-handed when you got all-stars all over the place in your lineup, Big C. They really are like an all-star team. But they stopped the Pacers 124-115. The Pacers scored a season-high 40 points in the first quarter. They took a 15-point lead. But then you got three-point shooter, Harden came in and did his thing. He became the second player in Nets history to record a 40-point triple-double, joining Vince Carter. April 7, 2007 is when Carter did his thing, dropping 46 points, 16 rebounds, and 10 assists. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, James Harden has been a machine since he left the OKC Thunder, Charlton. He's done this down in Houston, and now look at how great he has made the New Jersey or Brooklyn Nets,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call them. Who is Kevin Durant?
Yeah, well, Kevin Durant, he's resting up for the playoffs, Big C. He's resting up for the playoffs. Thinking of another giant of a performance, the great Giannis Antetokounmpo, Big C, lifted the Milwaukee Bucks 109-105. It took overtime over the Philadelphia 76ers. No Joel Embiid, so that's not really an impressive win, but a win is a win. You think about Antetokounmpo, Big C, he came up big in overtime, scoring 10 of his 32 points in the extra session to lead Milwaukee Bucks to a 109-105 victory over Philadelphia. And they didn't have the star player for Philadelphia, Joel Embiid, but it was a matchup of two of the top maybe three teams in the Eastern Conference. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you got to play with the guys that you go to the game with. You can't make excuses for who's not on the floor. But there was one thing that Giannis did in overtime that I didn't respect or appreciate as a former athlete. He pulled the a la Terrell Owens after he made this key shot in overtime. He goes and sits on the emblem at half court prior to, after a timeout is called, Charlton.
Yeah.
I think about to the old days of the NBA back in the 80s, if he had to pull that type of stunt, and there were players on the court like Rick Mahorn of the Detroit Pistons, John Lucas of the Portland Trail Blazers at that time, Charlton, or even Kermit Washington of the Los Angeles Lakers, that they most likely would have retaliated and took that technical foul to get him off the court.
Yeah, well, he's still a young man, and he'll learn his lesson next time he goes to the hole, and he's trying to jump 6 feet high in the air. Might not be an easy landing coming down. Sometimes what they do to Bucks when they find them out in the range. Big C, it's all fair in Leavenworth. P.J. Tucker headed to Milwaukee in a trade with Houston. Dante DiVincenzo, Big C, scored 20 points. The great Drew Holiday added 19 for the Bucks, who have won 5 in a row, and they've won 10 of 11. So maybe Giannis was just deciding he was too tired to walk to the halftime to the court. Off the court, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, even though whether he's tired or not, Charlton, you don't disrespect professional athletes like that.
Yeah, if they don't like it, they could always try to play better against them. It's all fair 11 war, Big C. Speaking of another great NBA player, Nikola Jokic, Big C, they call him the Joker. He only had 12 points, but he did have 10 rebounds and 10 assists for another triple-double. Michael Porter Jr. added 28 points for the Denver Nuggets, pulled away in the second half to beat the Charlotte Hornets by the score of 129-104 on Wednesday night. And there's some rumor that Michael Jordan was seen doing more push-ups. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Mike couldn't play with the great athletes of today, Charlton. I mean, he was good at the time, but he's well beyond his time.
Yeah, he plays with his bank account. That's what he likes playing with. His all-fan level war. The Joker has 10 triple-doubles this season and 51 overall. He also had his 228th triple-double, actually double-double on the move, past Dikembe Mutombo, the one-finger man, and the franchise record. You think about Joker, Big C. He leads the NBA in double-doubles this season. He has 36 double-doubles in 40 games, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, he's a consistent player. You know, when you talk about players in that MVP chase, I know LeBron's name is always going to be there at the top of the heap, but you can't look beyond James Harden and Nikola Jokic, Charlton, there in Denver as far as what their contributions have been to their teams this year.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is trying to get a name for themselves, and once you start contributing and you're consistent, but 36 out of 40 games, a double-double, that's pretty amazing. And now you go to the sexy part of the NBA. Some people, the old-timers say the three-point basket is ruining the game of the NBA. I don't think it's ruined the game of the NBA at all. It makes it more exciting, in my opinion, especially watching the Splash Brothers doing their thing in Northern California. But when you think about the NBA, there are more threes than ever in the NBA. And some people don't like that, Big C. That's like not liking sprinkles on your ice cream. Some people say, you can't put sprinkles on ice cream. You're going to ruin the ice cream. You don't ruin the ice cream with more sprinkles, Big C. 6 players. They've tried over 100 three-point baskets from 27 feet or more, Big C. Your thoughts?
That means that they're just launching, Charlton. I mean, it takes away the structure of the basketball offense. When you're just out there launching on the floor, and sometimes those are not even good shots. They just say, I feel like I'm in a rhythm, so I'm going to throw it up. I think the most important part, Charlton, is what is the percentage that they're hitting from out there.
Yeah, it's the percentage that they're hitting from out there. But you look at that kid down in Atlanta, I think he'll be a reason that he can shoot threes, that they'll get into the playoffs with the great Nick McMillan doing his thing, Big C. You think about some of the players. Dollar James dropped 50 points the other night. Even in the All-Star game down in Atlanta, it was Steph Curry and Dollar Dame that hit, I think it's right about a half-court three-point baskets, and it kind of ignited the crowd. People love seeing how far they can do it. But you look at Damian Lillard, Trae Young, Big C. You have Eric Gordon, Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, and then the LaMelo Ball, whose father had a lot of hype getting his kids into the NBA, but whatever he was doing, it was working. But out of those three, out of those players that I mentioned, those 6 players, Steph Curry actually won the three-point shootout, Big C. Your thoughts?
I mean, Steph is a shooter of leisure when it comes to the three-point ball in the NBA.
Yep.
He has changed the dynamics of the game, the way he shoots it. And so many players have started to follow his shooting tactics.
Yeah, but LaMelo Ball is shooting a higher percentage than everybody. But still, I want Steph Curry with the ball. If we have 2 seconds left and you're down by 1 or 2, I want Steph Curry with a chance to knock it down, whether it's from 2 or 3. It's all fair and level war. NBA, there were 6 triple-doubles Wednesday night, the most of a single day of the NBA history. Big C, it broke the record of 5. That was just set on Saturday night. It was also the 11th time that Nikola Jokic and also the great Russell Westbrook have each recorded a triple-double on the same day, and the second most by a pair of players all time behind LeBron James and also the great Westbrook. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, as you see the players in the NBA, nobody plays defense any longer. It's just launching. When you talk about guys launching the ball from the three-point neighborhood on a regular basis beyond 27 feet, that means you have less people up there to get rebounds. So if you got a guard that's sagging off or anything, he's going to have an extra opportunity to get rebounds, and especially the big man, Charlton. but also knocking down those assists. You know, you get that fast break outlet, guys cherry picking from those long shots.
Yeah, well, cherry picking is a good thing, especially down south. A lot of people like to pick cherries. But I love the fact that so many young players are doing their thing just off the court, though, Big C. Steph Curry, Golden State Warriors, and some WNBA players received the Jackie Robinson Award from the NAACP, which is very incredible. We always talk about who's the unknown Jackie Robinson on teams, but you think about NBA star Steph Curry drawing acclaim from civil rights leaders for his work campaigning for social justice, his support of women's causes. He had an interview with Dr. Anthony Fauci about the pandemic just last year. The NAACP, they actually gave him his Jackie Robinson Sports Award for the first time. The nation's oldest civil rights organization is recognizing more than one person by honoring the women of the National Basketball Players Association as well. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's great to see athletes be more than just athletes, Charlton, to be activists in social issues. We had that a lot from black athletes in the 60s. That was part of their everyday life, Charlton, be social activists, not just play the game.
Yeah.
And now that young players are getting involved in it here in the 2020s, it's a great sight to see once again.
Yeah, it's a great sight to see once again, and I just appreciate so many people. A lot of people like to quote Maya Angelou and describing Steph Curry, his leadership. He's learned that people will forget what you said. They will also forget what you did, but people will not forget how you made them feel. So I've always considered Steph Curry a class act. Obviously, he has a brother that plays in the league as well, and then they learned a lot from the father, Dale Curry, that also played NBA basketball as well as broadcasting. So he has a lot of tutelage to learn from. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that comes from parental involvement, like I often speak about, Charlton. When you got your parents there and they talk to you and spend time with you as a child, not just going out working with you on the athletic court, but teaching you social structural skills, Charlton. That's what gets you to advance more in life.
Yeah, it's a great thing to see that they've done so many great things. He's only 33 years old. I wish him nothing but the best. Tonight's NBA schedule, Big C, you have Utah that got a good win at Boston. It was close down the stretch, Big C, but I guess the script wasn't for Boston to win that game. Utah, they're on their East Coast swing. They're playing at Washington tonight. That game's already underway. Oklahoma City, they're playing at Atlanta. Atlanta's been playing hot lately, so Atlanta's putting themselves in position to start moving up that eastern seaboard in the rankings, Big C. Orlando, they're at the New York Knicks. The Knicks can either have a tail dive, Big C, or they can ascend. Which one are you more comfortable? Do you think you can look at the Knicks making the playoffs this year, Big C? Your thoughts?
It would be great for the NBA if the Knicks makes the playoffs, Charlton. I think they're the number 5 seed in the East right now. If they can just tread water the rest of the way, it'd be a big boost for the NBA fanfare.
It's a big boost for the NBA fans. For New Orleans is at Portland. Dollar Dame doing his thing, Big C. You have Charlotte. They're playing at the Los Angeles Lakers. And at the same time, you have Minnesota playing at the Phoenix Suns. I know right now that people are looking at the Lakers to maybe come out of the West when the season began, but there's something about that Phoenix rising down in the desert, Big C. This game for the Lakers is so important that they take care of Charlotte because Phoenix is going to take care of Minnesota. And you have Utah on that East Coast swing, and they got to go up to Toronto next. But there's a team down in the desert that's going to get a lot of home cooking. Who would you feel more confident making that move up the West to knock off or at least replace the Utah Jazz if they slip? Would it be the Lakers or would it be Phoenix, Big C? Your thoughts?
I'm not so sure that Utah will slip, Charlton. They've played solid basketball. They stayed healthy. Those other teams have gotten hot. Utah has stayed consistent.
Yeah, they stay consistent, but if you're looking at a Western Conference Finals, I know you already like what Brooklyn's done on the East Coast. It's looking like Brooklyn, Philadelphia, maybe, just maybe Milwaukee. I wouldn't even look past Miami on the East Coast. If you're looking at the West Coast, if the Jazz can maintain that top spot, and if they come back with a solid performance from the East Coast, I know they're going to play the 27th at home against the Brooklyn Nets. Who are you liking coming out of the West? Maybe their top 2 or 3 seeds, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's going to come down to the best three-point shooting teams in the West. It's not about names. It's about who's knocking down the threes. We know that the Lakers are the weakest three-point shooting team out there. We know that Phoenix is really hitting the three-point shot. We know that Utah can knock them down as well as Denver, Charlton. And, I mean, this is one of those dark horses that a team like Portland or even Golden State could make a run in the playoffs if they get there. Because it's just the best out of 7 series.
Yeah, the best out of 7 series, all fair and level war. And we hope that everyone can get to the playoffs without having any type of, setbacks or people having to sit back because of COVID. We know it's a moment that we have to pay attention to the science. The NBA and the NBA Players Association, they've agreed to alter their health and safety protocols, Big C, for the COVID-19 pandemic. For those who have been fully vaccinated, according to some sources, the NBA considers someone fully vaccinated 14 days after their final vaccine dose. And the changed guidelines apply to any team in which 85% of the players that are staff have been vaccinated. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, the COVID protocol comes down to if you want to spend the money to get into an arena.
Yeah.
I think that, that's what it comes down to with fans. I mean, everybody's not going to have the money based on the employment situation.
Yeah, based on employment. I don't think they're dropping ticket prices anywhere. But according to, there's some updated protocol for COVID, no mandatory quarantines based on exposure, no PCR test on off days. PCR tests on game days can be done earlier before 5 p.m. Players can go to outdoor restaurants, Big C. You see more of that opening up now, especially in the southern part of the country. Players can bring up to 4 guests with them on the road without prior testing. I don't know if that's a good thing. Players can leave hotel rooms at any time, Big C. Players and staff can attend meetings in person, not on Zoom calls. It also includes both teams-related meetings and business meetings. And masks. This is something that kind of concerns me. Masks will no longer be required at team facilities, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, you take your health into your own hands. I mean, it's like being in the public. I don't think athletes should be treated any different than that. If you want to take the risk of potentially getting COVID, then you drop all the procedures.
Yeah, that's just crazy. You got people going and interacting with people on airplanes flying all over the countries. Now it's just, they got to listen to their doctors. It's all fair and love and war. But there's so small number of players have received the first dose of the vaccine based on pre-existing conditions. I think the New Orleans Pelicans, they're the only team known to have a number of players and staffers who've all received their shots, Big C. All have received it. Among them are eligible in the state of Louisiana, and each state controls how it distributes its supply of vaccines. I know everybody has their personal choice, but it just seems we went through this last year when we were all being told it'll just wash away. It's just like the flu. It's not a big problem. After 500,000 fatalities, and maybe they're saying it's even starting to spike again. That's the thing that bothers me, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm not concerned about professional athletes and their callousness as far as not respecting the science and COVID-19, Charlton. When we look at the number of American citizens who have died that don't have the money that these athletes do or the health care that these athletes do, those are the people that concern me more than anything else. The people that have less privilege and opportunity in this country, when we think about minority citizens who have a hard time even getting access to the shot versus privileged individuals who can get a shot any day of the week.
Yeah, I just hope, I know they're trying to open up schools. People feel agitated and irritated, but you still got to focus on the science, and I hope that science will rule out along the way. I want to close out with one story on African-American facts, some amazing facts, Big C. We think about basketball and sports and football and basketball and baseball. When you think about the Harlem Hellfighters, Big C, black soldiers returning from World War I, they received a hero's welcome by blacks and whites alike in New York City, Big C. They were fighting in the war. They were all African Americans, Big C. Up the avenue they swung. Their smiles outshined the golden sunlight, Big C. Every line proud, chest pounding and expanding. How the medals of valor that they had won, the impassioned cheering of the crowds massed along the way drowned the blaring cadence from their former bands, Big C. The old 15th on parade in New York turned out to tender as dark-skinned heroes a New York welcome. It's amazing. February 18, 1919, a day after 3,000 veterans of the 369th Infantry, formerly the 15th New York Colored Regiment, they paraded up from 5th Avenue at 23rd Street to 145th in Lenox in New York City. It's amazing how many African Americans have served this country. And oftentimes we still say that people are trying to take away the right for black men to vote. And now we just had this shooting down in Georgia and 8 people's lives perished. And I just hope that at some point in time, our soldiers fought for everyone, to have liberty, peace, and justice for all, and to have the right to vote. And I really appreciate what those young men did, coming back. 3,000 veterans, Big C, from the 369th Infantry, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when they came back to America, yes, they got a hero's welcome. That was in Harlem, New York. Majority of those people that were lying in the streets were black people. But you also got to understand that those men went and fought and died for this country, could not even vote once they returned back to America. White people stopped them from voting during that time. Not only that, when they left New York and went back to their home cities, many of them from down south, because they all trained, majority of them at Tuskegee, Alabama, that they were met with racism and vitriol. They were not treated like American citizens. Don't think about the part of them being treated as heroes for one day in New York. They were thought of subhuman beings when they went back to their home cities, Charlton. They did not have the rights that those white soldiers had back then. They could not get a home loan. They could not go to a state institution, Charlton, as far as higher learning to complete their education. The thing about that, the celebration of one day did not replace the lifelong struggle that they still had to endure in coming back to this country after fighting for this country, and their children still had to go through the same vitriol that they did.
Yeah, I still appreciate the way they served their country. They did it the best they could, and they will always be heroes. The Harlem Hellfighters is all fair and level war. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble. With all you've got to use, how can you lose? Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, tonight is the opening night of the March Madness, Charlton, the NCAA tournament. 4 games are being played tonight. The first game to be won today was by a historical black college. Texas Southern University won the first game of 2021 March Madness. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, our doctors, our first responders. They win every game that they participate in.
They win every game they participate in. All you got to do is rise and shine. Rise and shine every day. You can rise and shine every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.